Imagine, if you could, the summer of 2010 is rapidly approaching and you are a camp counselor at a summer camp in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Your higher-ups have decided that the camp desperately needs a new attraction, this being a zipline. So for the better part of the spring, you and your fellow counselors have been building said zipline. And it's finally done now, after spending tens of thousands of dollars on it. But it's done, and might I say, it looks incredibly wonderful. All that's left is just to try it out. So, the ever-cautious mind, you decide, let's just strap a sack of potatoes to this, send that down, and see how it does. Well, it does go down, just at 65 miles an hour. So it completes its 143-foot drop at such a high speed that when it reaches the bottom, it splatters all over the pole at the bottom. Imagine if that was a child. Yeah, not good. But how could someone go through all of the process of making a zipline just for it to be a death trap? You know, like, huh? Well, in today's episode of Tyler Talks, we're going to be discussing the Something Awful Ripline, or the tale of the man who made a child death trap. Dexter Stratton is the Something Awful user with this exact problem. He and his coworkers have accidentally created a death machine. And to try and find a remedy to fix this engineering monstrosity, he went to the Something Awful forum known as Ask/Tell. What would follow would soon join Grover House and the Doom Bathroom in the halls of the Something Awful engineering mishaps. Although this one is less known compared to the other two because Dexter Stratton pretty much wiped everything about it off the face of Something Awful because he got doxxed. Due to the doxing, almost all the posts he made about this have been replaced with, "This is a thread about zip lines, but someone did something really ugly. Sorry, we're closed." You would think that the Wayback Machine could solve this, but there isn't a capture of the thread until after this happens, so we have to rely on Twitter user Dan Olson's oral retelling of the debacle. What's obvious from viewing the photos of the tower is that this was incredibly well built. A death machine, yes, but an incredibly well built one. The cables, as well as we heard from the thread, were also installed correctly. They had people from a public utility company show up and install them. So they did pretty much everything correct, except for actually getting engineers to help build the zipline. The problem with the zipline is it's an incredibly long and tall zipline. That doesn't sound bad on its own, except for the fact that it has a 19-degree angle of elevation. The average zipline has a 3-degree slope. So, with this 143-foot drop, the ripline leads to people going down at upwards of 55 to 65 miles an hour. That's fatal. For reference, here's a graph Twitter user Rebecca Harding made. Now, take note, the Washington Monument is not 169 feet, it's 169 meters, so ignore that. But if you want like a more accurate representation of this,
Statue of Liberty
is 151 feet from the top of the torch down to the base of her feet. So imagine falling from the top of the Statue of Liberty down to the base, and that's roughly a good idea of the distance you'd be falling on the ripline. So, how did the great minds at Something Awful theorize on how you could fix this death machine? Option 1. Use a bungee cord. Well, this was deemed to be too expensive, plus the risk of failure is just too high for it to be easily used. Option 2, let's just put a bunch of padding at the bottom so that they'll hit the padding instead of the wood pole. Well, the problem is, since they're going 65 miles an hour, there is no amount of padding cushion the impact. Okay, well, that might not work, but what about passive resistance from a big fan? I mean, the big fan could cause a lot of air resistance, which could slow down the zipline. That could work. But there was a zipline company in the Lake Tahoe region of California that tried that, and that led to a man getting decapitated on his honeymoon. So, probably not the best idea. Okay, let's just add a bunch of small rockets so we can launch the cameras into space. Actually, that might work. Let's put a pin in that and come back to it. Okay, why not a on-harness brake system? You know, give the campers like a brake or something they have to like press to slow it down. Well, then you're relying on a bunch of 10-year-olds to, you know, brake themselves. But like, they're going to be like flailing around, screaming and doing all that. So you can't rely on the kids to properly brake. Also, it adds a failure point, so it might not be the best. Well, okay, what if we take the brake and have someone off the zipline doing it? Like a third party, an off-harness braking system. Well, now it's just getting way too complex because, mind you, they've already spent tens of thousands of dollars on this. Now you're adding an insane amount onto it. Plus, adding an off-harness brake system is just going to add way too many fail points to be good. Okay, what about a giant catcher's mitt? Yes! This could work. Okay, but seriously, why don't we just put like an absolutely insane amount of slack on the line? Well, adding slack just goes back to the height issue. So, if you add enough slack to where a 70-pound kid goes down, no. Well, that goes back to the height issue. Since kids, you know, they weigh a bunch of different weights and they're on like different heights, you run into a new problem. So, if you adjust the slack so where a 70-pound kid can go down at like 20 miles an hour, 15, 20 miles an hour, like a sprint speed, then the kids who are like 200 pounds go down at like 30 to 40 miles an hour. Or if you do the opposite, where the kids who are 200 pounds go down at a reasonable speed, now you've created just a parabolic arc where the kids who weigh 70 pounds get stuck over a 40 to 50 foot drop, which some users have been describing as having a mass grave aesthetic. So, trying to use slack to fix the problem is going to be more or less impossible due to the fact that you aren't trying to like bump out a few like to make the ride more smoother. You're not like trying to do that. You're trying to bring something that's going at a highway speed to like a mild sprint. There's no way you can slack your way out of that. Other suggestions include just putting a giant ball pit at the end, just letting all the bad kids ride it, and also this lovely graphic, which just shows us that all we really need to do is just make the zipline cooler. As we know, cool points cancel out child death, so that could work. Well, what happens now? Do they fix it? Is there a conclusion to this story? Well, we run into a new issue. So Dexter Stratton was interviewed by a YouTube channel, but that video was taken down, so I guess we won't know. Sorry. If it wasn't for the crazy ass moments in Something Awful Twitter page having an archived transcript of the interview, so we know what happens afterwards, after the thread is posted. So, a little while later, the thread is posted to the FIAD forum, which is basically like a random general forum where all like the cool kids hang out and they poke fun at stuff. In this case, when they were reading this, they were, you know, justifiably shitting on the construction of the Zipline, because how the fuck are you going to build a Zipline but, like, not have any engineers? Whatever. And then they think of some James Bond-esque movie titles for this. You know, View to Kill, Children Aren't Forever, stuff like that. But this is also around the same time when Dexter Stratton gets doxxed, like I said earlier. Was it because of a Fayed goon? Oh, I should mention, users of Something Awful are called goons. This is pre-gooner, so the connotation wasn't there yet. Just for future reference. We don't know. It could have literally been anyone to do it, but it was around the same time, so it's a possibility. But we don't know. But the day after he posted the thread, Stratton would get a call from the camp facilities person because there were police at the camp. Because of his forum post. How did they get that? Well, you see, they were able to dox him because in one of the photos there was a little truck at the bottom, and you could just kind of make out the license plate. Running the plate, they got the camp address, and then they called. Well, what did this doxer say to the police? He said, "They're creating a child-killing machine!" Ah! And, of course, since he was doxxed, he decided he needed to delete everything off of Something Awful and create a new account. Which is why all the old posts for this have nothing on them anymore. Well, is there an epilogue to this story? Does he just get doxxed and then that's it? Nope. The Zipline was eventually successful at bankrupting the park. The financial reserves were effectively nuked, trying to come up with some solution to fix the Zipline. And since this was 2010, the Great Recession finally hit the camp, and since people didn't have enough money, there was less enrollment to the camp. So the camp had less funds. This led to the camp needing to lay off people to keep it functioning in some capacity. Dexter Stratton was one of the people left off. But things would work out for him, because he would eventually get his dream job at a later date. And I mean, at the time he said his girlfriend was also working, so he wasn't like broke after this. The Ripline 2 was fixed later on. A 4-lane, 200-foot zipline was built from the bottom platform back to the hillside. The top platform was more or less just used as a viewing thing. Dexter Stratton said some of the kids at the park would ask him what the taller platform was used for. Well, if only they knew.